So, what Kalaman and Lungold interpreted, and again, this is based on a giant stone, bunch of carvings, bunch of calendars, counting down 9 different periods of time, starting at 16.4 billion years ago, proceeding 20 times faster, all the way up to the top. As each of those 9 levels happens, they're subjected to 13 different aspects of evolution that we've talked about. 7 days of creation. And if you look at the first creation story in Genesis, the one in Genesis chapter 1, because there are 2 stories. If you know where to put the comma, or rather if you know where to put the period instead of the comma, in Genesis chapter 2 verse 3, what you will find is 2 separate stories, actually conflicting just as far as in the arrangement of when things happened and what got created. Again, if you understand that they're not giving you a recipe for how to create a world or a universe in 7 days, they're talking about other concepts, it's not a contradiction. Right. Oh, the Bible contradicts itself. Well, no, it doesn't. You're trying to read it too literally. They're talking about a process. Right. That's what Genesis 1 is about. 7 days and 6 nights of creation. And if you read it, you'll see that that's the process that's laid out in Genesis. It happens exactly like that. That's true. So, these are things that are embedded, according to the Maya, in their understanding of the way that the natural world and God's world works. 20 times faster. And we talked about that we're living in the last 20 years. Well, we're living in the last of all these. Last 20 years of the planetary cycle. Sort of matches up with the generation gap I said. We're talking about people changing their mind about every 20 years. Again, if you go and track some of the things that have happened from 1755 on, it's amazing what you'll find. You start looking at the revolutions that took place, French and American, and then spread on around. You can choose, and I urge you to do this, again, no way we have time to do it tonight, but online you can find, and you can look up, say, the history of writing under the planetary cycle, or since the national cycle. Anything that you want to look at that's technological, it's got to be from this cycle above. And you can see it follow this progression. If you want to follow IT, the internet and all that stuff. If you want to follow the history of communications from the first telegraphs to telephones to television to the internet, all follows that, okay? And we're living in that last 20 years. Does anyone else out there ever experience or feel like time is speeding up? Everyone, almost without exception, that I talk to, maybe not in those words, but to some degree, has a sense that, darn it, it seems like time is speeding up. Well, what are we talking about there? Again, time, we're not talking about chronological, chronos time. That's set. Clock's got it. There's 2 12-hour periods, 60 minutes, 60 seconds. That's it. That's time. So that can't be speeding up. It's the same. What is? Well, if time is really a factor of consciousness, is our consciousness speeding up? Or is our consciousness just becoming more aware? Think of it in this way. Lost it for a second there. Back to that earlier thing about recognizing patterns and then being able to move on to new things. Okay. As we have more and more options presented to us at a particular moment, we have more choices to make, and more possibilities for awareness. Okay. So think about consciousness and its development having some relation with the options, the possibilities that are available to any one person at a particular time. Let's look at it in history. Back here in the cultural, say 8,000 years ago, what kind of options did a person have? Not a whole lot. Most of your time was spent either trying to catch food or make sure you weren't food or find some place to sleep for the night. You didn't have many options. By the time we get to the national level, where the city-state has begun, agriculture is in full swing, animal husbandry, all of that, these people had more options. Thus they created writing, literature, perfected art, all of those things. Conscious development, more options. Planetary cycle. Things are changing about every 20 years. What options are available to a person living in 1755 that weren't available to a person in 3100? Steam engines, gas light, all kind of things. How about a person living now in the last 20 years of the planetary cycle? What kind of options do we have available to us versus anyone, anywhere in history at any time before this? Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. Google it. It's in your phone. The world. Literally. Right now. And not too far off. Months, really, we're talking about. That you could call and make a face-to-face phone call, have a conversation with anyone, anywhere in the world. No one in the entire history of creation that we know of has been able to do that. Do we have more options available for each and every moment that we live than anyone else in history?
Yes.
Can you understand why we sometimes feel like time is speeding up? Because there's so much available for our consciousness to apprehend, comprehend. And what's really neat about it is that as these times speed up, get shorter, guess what also gets shorter? Your learning curve. Your learning curve gets a lot shorter. You pick up on stuff fast, and you remember it, if it's important to you. And you can sit to study something that 10 years ago took a lot of effort, and you can start reading it now and be like, okay, yeah, I get that. I'm not sure why I get it, but I do. You ever had those moments?
Yeah.
Where we're feeling inspiration, tackling a problem or a project or something. Maybe we've done it 100 times before, maybe we've never done it, but all of a sudden there's that moment of inspiration. Oh my God, why didn't I see that? Man, if I just do this, poof, wow, there it is. Well, yeah, I knew that. I mean, it's really not that special. Anybody could have done that. In fact, why hadn't anybody done that? And then you look around and everybody is doing it. Have you ever had that thought?
Yeah.
You thought of a story? How long before you saw it on a big screen or a TV movie? All right? Is somebody out there just mining our minds? Or are we all experiencing consciousness development and acceleration together as a species, as a planet? Because it's global now. Right? Planetary cycle, at the end of it, we saw the beginning of a planetary, truly global world. Thus, protests against World Trade Organization, the beginning of the internet. Not Al Gore, it was really DARPA. Everything comes from the Defense Department, but, including Google, but, NSA, I'm sorry. That all started right here, all right? And just about every year for over the last 10 years, we have been experiencing pretty radical change, have we not? And again, I urge you when you go home, you can check this out. Pick an area and look at its historical development in one of these three areas that we're talking about, but especially here, and watch how things take off, and watch how consciousness develops. This cycle, galactic cycle, I said, the conscious development was truth. Here it was power, consolidation of power. Okay? By the time we get to the beginning of the galactic cycle, we have pretty much seen power around the world consolidated or being consolidated in every possible way we can imagine. Political, economic, cultural, societal, everything coming under one. Of course, the corporations. It's an easy example because it's very visible, but that's been happening over the last 10 years at an astounding rate, to where now, how many companies are actually responsible for all the print, news, television, and movie media that the world gets? 5, and it's narrowing down every day. Governmentally, every day in every newspaper around the world, constant calls for some different form of the necessity for a new world government. World government. We're a global. We need to have a world currency, because there's currency wars happening right now. The United States is right in the middle of a very hot currency war right now with China and Russia and most of the other world. Consolidation of power. And with that has grown also all of the bad things that came out of the national cycle, with the technosphere that's been budding this whole time. We've been focusing on a lot of the good, the consciousness developments, and we all know the difference between here, say, and here, right? When we have human rights, equality in race and gender, certainly the idea is not perfectly in practice yet, but we're getting close. A lot better than we were back here. We've made great strides in those things, but there's also a whole lot of ugliness out there in the world. We still can't shake off war. Wonder why? Go home and take a look at your calendar. And look at the holidays, the holy days that our culture celebrates, and what we elevate by celebrating that. You might find some interesting things. We say that humanity is addicted to war, addicted to violence, we can't get over. But we all know that's not true. It's just that something's holding us back. It seems. Because we all want to do the right thing. We're all in here. We're all a little bit different, a little bit similar, but we're not just killing each other to steal each other's watches or wallets or go take each other's houses. Not at all. So we know that the potential for peaceable coexistence and all of those wonderful higher ideals exist. Something's holding us back. Something's holding us back. The 3 major religions of the world, we say it's Satan, the dark forces, evil. The Maya agree. They just had different names. They said one is the way of Hunab-Ku, which means the one giver of movement and measure. Does that make sense for the Maya? That their God would be the one giver of movement and measure? Because that's what it's all about to them, measuring the movement of what cycles. Again, wonder if any of this is true. People say, Ron, is that really true, what you're talking about? I don't know. Do you see it out in the world? Because if you see it in cycles, then it's something that's happening in nature. If it happens in a cyclical nature, then there's things we can do. We can look at it. We can identify what happens during the cycles. And then we can also